And welcome to another finally airlifted episode of Midlife Krisis. And by that I do mean similar to when a hang glider from California Games just goes right off that cliff. And that's California Games 2, not to be confused with California Games 1.
Nobody would confuse.
Not on my watch. Certainly not on my watch. Okay, so today we're going to have a little bit of a free-form chitty chat all about PC gaming versus console gaming. Mm-hmm. What's kind of spurned this, I think, is in a lot of these episodes we talk about how we consume our games. You're definitely more of a PC gamer than I am, although you have, ever since the Switch came out, it's like you reopened this this heart of yours to what console gaming is. And conversely, like I bought a Steam Deck, which is about as close to a gaming PC as I'm ever going to have. But it did the same exact story. Like it opened up my horizons to like all these other things that I couldn't get on console. So let's discuss why we are the way we are, and what are some of the mechanics of those, and then let's do maybe a little tit for tat. What's pro and con for each thing. I think maybe to start, what I wanted to do is kind of talk about the culture of both. Okay. So for me, and I know we've, in a somewhat recent episode where you praised Helldivers 2, not to be confused with Hellblade 2, which he does not praise. Yeah.
The high and the low of gaming for me in 2024.
Of hell games, right?
Yeah.
But I remember this whole conversation that we had, and it was a kind of a news story at that time, and we're going back a couple months. But the idea that it's a Sony game, and so people who wanted to play it on PC on Steam had to sign up for PSN. Mm-hmm. And that was like asking, like the biggest ask of it. It was literally like pulling teeth to some of these people, and the uproar and the rage that came from it. So let's start there in terms of the cultural debate, because on I am certainly more of a console gamer than a PC gamer by a factor of 10 to 1. For me, like certainly grant you that it's annoying to have to sign up for stuff. Don't get me wrong. But I can't, like, the way I consume games, I have a PlayStation, so I have a PSN account. Done. Yeah. I have an Xbox, so I have an Xbox Live account. And we're done. I have a Switch Online account, and that's the turkey, so now I'm done. Just some, not really that recently, but we'll say for the sake of this conversation, starting to play Steam games, I have a Steam account. Yeah. And that's that. Like, I think I signed up for Epic to get a Samurai Showdown anthology, which I have never played on my PC. But other than that, it's just something that, it doesn't affect me at all. Why, with the PC side of things, what is your perspective on that? Why do people get so fucking pissy for it?
Well, people don't like signing up for things, even if they're free.
Yeah.
Just sort of as a theoretical experience. It's like, well, look, if you're signing up for something, then PC gamers tend to be a little more iffy about who's going to have have access to your data. You might get spam emails from them. It's just the sign up process, even if they just make it as simple as possible, is just a little annoying. And because the PC ecosystem is so democratized, for lack of a better word, there's all this shit that you have to sign up for all the freaking time. It's the most annoying thing in the world. You want to play Grand Theft Auto, you got to sign up for a Rockstar account. Yeah. You want to play Fortnite, you got to sign up for an Epic account. You got to sign up for a Steam account to play through Steam. If you don't want to use Steam, you can use good old games, but then you got to sign up for an account for that too. So, and it's sort of related, but sort of unrelated. On PC, you have to sign up for accounts for all this other crap that you do in your life, whether it's your email or just if you want to pay your phone bill online.
Or like NVIDIA shit, right? If you have like a new graphics card, you got to do a dumb graphics card thing.
So that's such a good example. So thank you for making my point for me. It's like you don't have to sign up for an NVIDIA account to play or an AMD account to play your AMD graphics card or a video game on your AMD graphics card console system. But then you do for PC.
Well, another example of that too, sorry to cut you off, but another example of that too is, so my son, for his birthday last year, we got him like a nice mechanical like RGB keyboard. Like I think a Corsair keyboard or something.
Yeah.
So in order to take advantage of like all the fucking RGB fuckery, You had to go download like the IQ Corsair app to be able to play with that stuff.
Yeah.
I don't got to download shit to play with the DualShock or the DualSense 5.
Yeah.
Like it just works.
It works with your Sony.
Yeah, exactly.
So one of the things, probably at its root, the biggest philosophical divide between PC gamers and console gamers is PC gamers have to do more stuff. There's just more involved in that. And you might think, well, then why would anybody play PC games?
Yeah.
Because it is so much simpler on console. There's a trade-off for that in that the good side of PC gaming is it's a little bit more customizable. You can have bleeding edge hardware, which gives you bleeding edge graphics.
Yeah, no question about that.
So there's a byproduct, but it's just a process to get through it. And I love that I'm going to get this throwback. One time you and I were playing a Nintendo game, and I think it was like you had done a modification to a system to do an emulated experience, and it was when you did it so that on a CRT screen you could do the RGB, and it's basically the best version of RGB you could get.
Yeah.
And so we're playing the game, and then there's like some slowdown or something with the game, and just a lot of stuff came up. And I was kind of laughing a little bit, like, oh man. And you're like, hey, that's the Nintendo difference. That's just part of it. That's part of the magic.
Yeah, it's part of the experience. Absolutely.
And so I've found myself co-opting that line. And whenever I have friends who are struggling to get a game to load, or they get a random crash, basically an Alt F4 crash in the game, including in Helldivers, I find myself telling them, that's just part of the PC difference.
Yeah.
That's the
you
magic.
signed up for.
Yeah, spending 4 hours trying to find some obscure forum post that tells you the registry code that you need to edit to make this game work on this system in this way.
You know, it's funny you bring that up too, because it's like, so one of the things that I think people like, and I think this is a part of the enjoyment. People love to do this stuff, but the tinkering side of PC gaming, like getting your benchmarks and like seeing just how much you can do with whatever it is that you own. I experienced that with like like you just brought up, like modifying old systems, and like in the retro gaming culture, there's a lot of that shit too, where you like, quite frankly, and I think this is the right term for it, you waste time
totally
tinkering with your shit in order to get it the way that you want to work, and then by the time you're done tinkering, it's like 1 a.m. and now you can't really play a video game.
So recently, several months ago, my PlayStation controller batteries were dying.
Yeah.
And so I could have just spent $60 to just buy a new PlayStation controller, but I wasn't going to do that. Instead, I ordered a battery online, and then why stop there?
You're goddamn right.
I also got a new case with a fancy color, and then why stop there? I also got buttons that had an LED effect, and then why stop there? I got back buttons, like paddle buttons you could put on the PlayStation controller. It did require a little bit of solder work, but no problem. You just buy a soldering iron.
Yeah. Learn how to solder.
So what could have been solved for $60, I spent an entire weekend of like 15 hours teaching myself how to do, just so that at the end of it, I could have a fully functioning controller, PlayStation controller, in a different casing with LED buttons and back flippers, and almost all the buttons work.
Yes.
Only 2 don't work.
Almost all. That's great.
And by the time I was into hour like 12, my wife looked at me and was like, how much do you charge an hour for your legal services?
Yeah. And what's funny too is like the older you get, the more like that's a real world perspective of like, what's my time actually worth?
Yeah.
And I know like, so for like with EverDrives and stuff like that, like I really like to take my own time and like curate lists, because it's like, I'm never going to fucking play NBA Live 95. Like I don't give a shit. I'm not going to play Barbie's Horse Adventure. So like getting a full ROM set.
I'm in the credits for that game.
That's so cool.
That's true. I'm in the credits for that game. Well, now you need to play that game.
Now I have to play that game now.
Yeah,
I'm sitting across from royalty. Barbie Horse Adventure royalty.
That's our next Let's Play.
Yeah. That's a really good idea. But so it's fun for me. It's fun to take the time, almost like making a mixtape. Like it's fun to take the time and create my own ROM list of games that I like, and like organizing them in a certain way or whatever. It's funny. Like one of the reasons I wanted to talk about this is like, I think back in the like the fucking voodoo card days, like there was no parity. I think console gaming was a very separate experience, and PC gaming was a very separate experience.
Yeah.
And all the way down the channels, like you didn't have online games with great volume on console games. It was only a PC gaming thing. Certain genres were just like stuck in those columns. And like you fast forward to today, and there's so much parity across the board. You know, there's like fucking that Monkey Island game that came out recently, the Return to Monkey Island, I think it was called.
Yes.
That was a day and date release on PC and every console you can possibly imagine.
Yep.
And like this is the new Age of Mythology game that I will not at all play.
Can't wait.
Yeah, I know you can't. But I mean, like that's coming out on the same day on Xbox as it is on PC. Yep. But the same thing goes with all this tinkering shit. Like there used to be no tinkering on console games. That's why you played console games. But I think more and more these like boutique companies that pop up that offer like that cool controller casing thing. Like there's been so much convergence over the years between console gaming and PC gaming that it's kind of become like the same thing. There's still some areas where it's very different. You know, obviously, I think the go-to example is like with video cards. Like obviously, video card is the engine that drives your PC, and that's where you spend the most fucking money. And you can't really do that. You can't throw a new GPU into a PS5. So you have us there. But the fact that like the PS5 is kind of like no slouch to begin with graphically anyway.
Definitely.
It's just like this thing where now there is. It's not fair to say there's an even playing field because I've seen what your fucking $10,000 PC can do with a 4090 and a PS.
For a light $10,000, Brian, you too can have that experience.
Yeah. So PS5 can't do all of that stuff. There's no question about that. But like that was another canyon too. That was so vast, and I think that's over time gotten more and more narrow.
It's definitely gotten more narrow, and although I think that to call back to my favorite game, Hellblade, that represents the state of the art in graphic achievement in games. Yeah. But if you look at a game like Horizon Forbidden West, that is no slouch in the graphics department. So if you're talking about a $500 PlayStation compared to a $10,000 PC, you can get about 85% of the way there with your console. Yeah. That costs 1/20th of what a bleeding edge PC costs. So if you want the absolute best experience, if you're a min-maxer in terms of the experience that you demand of a system, and if price is no object, then and if you have the time to tinker with it,
that's probably the biggest ask.
Then PC is for you. Otherwise, though, again, you can get 85% of the way there for 1/20th of the cost and still have a number of very, very good experiences by just getting a PlayStation. And the other thing too is that with the advent of online stores and things like that, most of the indie game space, which used to be PC's exclusive domain, is now eventually, at least, those games make their way over to the consoles pretty quickly, and then eventually even mobile devices.
Would you say, for a quick little birdwalk here, would you say that indie games were the PC's domain? Because the way I remember it is like those Xbox Summer of Arcade things, and just those little storefronts, like when PSN was first a thing on PS3. Again, the early days of Xbox 360. Like to me, it seems like it kind of started there, and then. Well, I guess it's like a different tier of what we're talking about. Like, obviously, if you go back to the days of fucking shareware, which, by the way, that's when I would consider myself a PC enthusiast, was when I was 8 and I had a 286 and no one else was playing PC games. And here I am playing the original Duke Nukem and Commander Keen and all that shit. But so in that regard, like those are literally the definition of independent games, and they were sold in Ziploc bags and so on and so forth. So, like, I will put my foot in my mouth because clearly you are right, but in terms of that other, like, ushered in by games like Braid, those types of things,
the internet era.
Yeah, to me, like my recollection of all that stuff is that it started on console and then they came to Steam afterwards.
I would say the same thing. It started on Braid, and we did a whole episode on this. So Braid being like what ushered in the indie game revolution, then that started on Xbox. But the second part of that revolution, though, was the Steam summer sales all of a sudden making this entire avalanche of games available.
The Steam, it cannot be understated that one of the best things that the Steam sales did is it made other companies in the console space realize that, like, if we really want to maximize our profits, we should be flexible with how we price our shit. And the best way to do that is to do sales. And I remember for a long time, again, going back to the PS3 and 360 era, those games that came out were never on sale for like a long run of time. And then those Steam sales got more and more popular, and to the point where like Sony and Microsoft's hands were forced. Nintendo didn't do this. Like the Wii, at the time when they had the Wii and they had the Wii Shop, those games fucking never went on sale.
We just talked about me buying Mario vs. Donkey Kong, which you said was a GBA game originally, I think. It's a reskin of a GBA game.
Yes.
What was it? I paid $60 or $70. I'm not sure which
That
one.
was a $50 game.
Was it 50?
To be fair, you paid $50 for a reskin to GBA ROM.
Yeah. Nintendo knows what they're doing.
Yeah, they do. And whatever you need, Daddy, I'll buy it. But no, I think that's one of the biggest gimmies that PC gaming gave to console gaming is this exact thing, where it's just like, yeah, you can make millions of dollars by charging fucking $1.99 for your games, and then you just make up the money in volume, and you just tinker with the levers, like just have timed sales and now you don't go on a platform without seeing. You go to the store. There's a sales tab. You see what the current sales are. And like it's just a part of the experience, but that was a thing that totally was aped from console game or from PC and given to console games.
Yeah, I think I told this story before, but I will never forget being on my honeymoon when the very first Steam sale ever happened, and then getting to my former roommate who lived in Norway, and I've just been backpacking, so I didn't know what was going on. And I get to his apartment, and he's not asking me like, "What have you seen? How's it been so far? What's it like being married?" He's like, "Dude, you have no idea what's going on online right now. Come look, quick."
These games are $3.99.
And he told me, he's like, I bought like 78 games, and I've spent like $35.
Yeah. I will say, so the early days of the Steam sales, those first few, it was like that. It was like bargain basement. It was like,
nuts.
Here's a game for 49 cents.
Yeah, it was very. I remember buying games for like literally 49 cents.
Yeah, and there's pockets of that still today, but by and large, it's like, oh yeah, Elden Ring is no longer $59.99. It's $40 now.
Well, and they used to have. They would have like flash sales where it's like, if you can get in on this in the next 3 hours, and you can get it for 80% off. Now, I think it was a little bit different this year, but I didn't buy any games this year. But now it's just like, for the next 2 weeks, here's all of our deals, and it's just like one static price reduction, which is still great. I'm not hating on you, Uncle Gabe, but those early days, there was nothing like that.
Yeah, it was it's one of those things where I kind of have a pang of regret of not being able to get on that a little bit earlier. But at the same time, in order for me to really enjoy that stuff, I would have had to invest, thousands of dollars on a PC that is kind of uncomfortable for me to play, which brings me to my next point about this. And I think this is totally a PC versus console gaming argument. However, like a lot of this other stuff that we're talking about, parity has been achieved because I'm not an idiot. I know I can take a really expensive PC and video out to my TV and take an Xbox controller and play my PC from my couch. I'm aware that that's a thing. But most PC gamers don't do that.
Correct. Including me. I don't.
I would say including and especially you, because you have like fucking more monitors than you do children, and you've got a lot of kids.
Equal. I have 3 monitors.
And 3 children.
I have 3 children. It's no fake news on this
show.
No
fake, we're straight shooters here. No hyperbole at all. But that's the thing. So for me, that's always been a bridge. Like when I was a kid, and then we had the big, giant fucking oak desk with the 286 beige box.
Oh, yeah.
That's how you played that fucking thing. Well, when I was a kid, I was able-bodied, and my neck and back didn't hurt all the time. And I hadn't put my body through various stupid choices yet. So for me, like, video games, like, I need to have a big-ass fucking screen. I need to be on a super comfortable couch. I need to be able to be like far away so I can take the whole thing in. That's one of the biggest hurdles for me in terms of being like a full-fledged PC gamer is how you consume your games. For you're right up in the mix, right? You are a PC gamer. You're at the desk and the whole deal.
So the description here is important. I do a lot of work for my computer. I have 3 monitors. I have 2, I think 32-inch LCDs that are in portrait mode because I just like read documents off of those. And then those are one's off to the left and then one's kind of in the middle. Then I have a 42-inch monitor that is in landscape mode. That's a little bit off to the side, but it's on a swivel deal.
Right.
So when it's time for me to go into gaming mode, I just rotate that monitor around and then shove it. And it is...
I've seen him do it. It's magical.
And it is no more than like 18 inches away from my face.
You're like the same thing that 10-year-old Robbie did when he was playing Zelda, just right up on that TV.
It's so good that you said that. I would sit like inches away.
Yeah.
And when I watch sports, I've been like this my entire life.
Yeah.
And now I'm wearing glasses. And
No, shocking.
I don't think it's going to get any better. But
Yeah.
when I play my games on the 42-inch, it might as well be sitting further back on an 80-inch because it's right there.
Yeah. It's in the mix.
And when you're cranking those graphic settings all the way up, you really got to sit that close to notice the differences.
Yes.
It's like,
Yeah.
well, the lighting effects here are really, really good.
So that's actually, so it's funny. The whole like rise to 4K gaming, and we've beat that subject up to death, like in terms of like how much it's set back game development to achieve these seemingly unachievable things on console, and how much money it costs to do it.
And HDR2 is a thing. So.
Yeah, but to me, it's like HDR is, and I'm no engineer, folks. I don't mean to ruffle any feathers, but like I think that HDR seems like it's a more of like a system level or hardware level type of a thing, where it's like if your TV can do it, like games will do it. And you're kind of set there.
Okay, yeah, I understand what you're saying. But I agree.
But in terms of like, making Spider-Man 2 run at fucking full native 4K running 60 frames a second, I mean, they can't even do that.
They cannot do that.
So it's like, but when I'm sitting on my couch, and this is a thing that I brought up on the show, and I firmly believe this, like 1080p games are fine. And part of the reason why they're fine for me is because I sit on my couch in this room, which is like at least 10 feet away from my TV. And like, you can tell the difference between obviously like a Switch game and like Elden Ring running at the best possible settings, like clearly. But at the same time, like that 1080p game that I'm playing on the Switch, like, it really doesn't look that bad at all from my TV. And therefore, like, go ahead and keep making those. Like, I'm okay with it.
Yeah.
And I think that is an advantage to console gaming and the way console gaming is consumed. Like when you're far away from your TV, this shit matters a whole lot less. But when you're right up in there and you're up in those guts, so to speak, and like checking out the graphics from that level, then then the fidelity does matter.
And if you're the kind of nerd who's like looking for dynamic lighting and the texture quality, and if you're saying to yourself like it's helpful to my immersion that I'm not seeing pop in the background of certain things, like there's a couple guys online, Digital Foundry.
Oh,
those guys.
I know them very well.
Yeah, and so they do these sorts of breakdowns,
Yes.
and they show you. And sometimes I'm watching the breakdown, and it's like, had you guys not pointed that out to me, I probably wouldn't have even noticed it on my own.
Yeah.
And we are getting to the point that, I mean, the human eye it has the same. The human eye has not been upgraded in thousands of years.
Yeah.
So the technology is getting better.
Not yet.
Yeah, right. The bionic eye is coming. So the technology is getting better, but it is going to reach a point where it reaches parity with the human eye can see.
I've seen it written that it's that 8K is that number. Like once you go beyond, like there isn't much of an advantage going beyond 8K. And generationally, within the next 10 years or so, like that's going to be the prevailing technology is everything will be 8K because that's how these things work.
Sure, and then you got to look for other things to justify your technological advantages, and those things are out there. You and I have talked both, and this is sort of the hill that I'm going to die on, which is that video games need more particle effects, more busyness in terms of the objects that you see on the screen.
Yeah,
it's one thing to have photorealistic graphic quality; it's another thing to have that in an environment that also feels like it's lived in because you have a whole bunch of stuff going on at the time, like there is in the real world.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Like when you're in a city having, a lot of people around, having trash float around, things like that. So anyway, eventually consoles will get there. PCs will get there first. And for now, though, I absolutely agree with you that it is kind of getting to the point where the good enough, 1080p being good enough, I actually agree with that. And if the gameplay is good, to go back to another one of the themes of our shows, then you can take 2 steps back in the graphics for all I care.
Mm-hmm.
As long as the gameplay is good enough, that can carry a game pretty far.
Oh, for sure. Okay, so why don't we do this as we wrap up this talk? Let's go back and forth. Give me a good thing and a bad thing about PC gaming, and then give me a good thing and a bad thing about console gaming. Okay. I'll start. So, good thing about PC gaming. I think it's all, and this is the historical one. It's always been this way for time immemorial. If you want the latest and the greatest, and if that's your deal, that's your jam, the best place to do that is on PC. It's gotten less so over time, but it's still a thing. I know from people who, such as yourself, that have like the highest end graphics card that you can possibly get, like you can't take anything away from that. Now the barrier to that, of course, is that cost of a graphics card is like 3 PS5s.
5 actually. I paid $2,400 for
So
mine.
stupid. But anyway, so that's the barrier, and it's certainly not it is not an insignificant barrier. But if you can afford it, and if that's your deal, I think that's the way to go for sure. The other thing with PC gaming that we kind of touched on too is like it's really, really tough to beat like the software pricing, because it runs from free to historically very free to where now they got to a point where there's a lot of competition with free, and that's what Steam ushered in. Is like, well, you don't have to resort to fucking playing, the wares of the past or the crack games of the past. Like if we charge you a normal amount of money for a game, there's an audience for it.
Totally.
And that's been proven for the last 20 years easily. And you can see it. Like the levels of piracy have significantly dropped because of the way how Steam operates its sales and just how easy it is to use. So then the bad thing with PC gaming, in my opinion, is it's the chase of the dragon, where I do think you spend far more. And if this is your deal, it's your deal. So I'm not talking shit on it. This is my perspective.
Okay.
But like I think you waste entirely too much time dialing in your shit and getting it to like this pitch perfect experience.
Yeah. That's the magic.
As I said, for some people it is the magic. For me, I want to get into the game. So you can have it. You can have your magic. I'll be a sicko elsewhere. Like when it comes to making my Sega Genesis output the best analog video possible, I'll jump through those hoops. So that's that. And then on the console gaming side, for me, it's really tough to beat the convenience of it. And I do think that there's a certain, and I think again over time it's changed, but if you look back at games of the past, like there was a certain level of quality that always followed along side by side with console gaming that a lot of PC games just never got to. Like the B tier games, as you were, if you want to use that term. Like I always felt that was a little bit better on the console side. Like you had a wider road of good to excellent games because it seemed like there's more focus there in the way that they were developed. Like PC games, like you had to make them work on these machines that were also designed to do fucking business work and do like editing and shit like that.
Yeah.
Console games, it was like, nope, this is the device that plays the game, and you are basically the constraints are off in terms of development, and therefore a lot of the quality is reflective of that. And then the downside, the con that I'll throw at console gaming is that in some regards it's more expensive than PC gaming. Today, as we talk in 2024, games that I used to buy all day long at places like yard sales and like secondhand stores, those were $10. Like people, like you're buying someone's trash. Now today, like I was just at a friend's house playing Lightning Force on the Genesis, which I kept that game when I sold all my Genesis games, just because I loved it so much. But or better examples are the two Splatterhouse Genesis games. Like if I wanted to own real versions of those games, and I do, like I have them, but I can't sell them because if I wanted to buy them again, guess what? They're $400 fucking on eBay, and like that's crazy. That's absurd and stupid. And then along that same line of thinking, I'm a big Nintendo fan. Nintendo games so rarely come down in price. Like there's almost never sales on that shit.
Yeah.
So a brand new Nintendo game is almost always $60. Dollars to donuts, I would wager that the next Switch that comes out, those games are all going to jump up to $70 because that door's been opened.
Yep.
Tears of the Kingdom was a $70 game.
Yeah.
So like that's what that's always going to be. And on PC, if you just wait like a week, that game is going to be fucking $9.99.
Yeah, that's true.
So I'll throw to you. Give me some pros of PC gaming, some cons, and then the same with console gaming.
So on the for PC, I will sign on to your Pro in terms of just the bleeding edge hardware. If you really want the best of the best, it's still there on PC. It just sort of speaks for itself. But also, so that's the actuality. But also, I'll talk a little bit about the psychology. And the psychology is this: if you build your own PC and you build it from scratch, and it's got bleeding edge tech, and then you turn it on and you see a BIOS screen, there is a very, very nice feeling of self-satisfaction that comes along with that. In fact,
like a Frankenstein's monster kind of a feeling.
It's just like that. Yeah. And when I built my PC, I actually recorded the moment that I turned it on, had my son there, linked you to a video in our chat, and when you see that BIOS screen pop up and the fans are, and everything's looking okay, it feels really, really good. And the first time you benchmark it, when you see all the numbers that are in the red, yeah. So if you can get through all the hurdles, so this is why it's like I'm setting it kind of on kidding on the square when you say like part of the magic is like all the bullshit that you have to go through, but actually that's only kidding on the square, because going through all of that, and if you can come out the other side of it, and see the thing that you made, and then see how it's how it is.
It's like it's a literal like rite of passage, basically.
There's something very, very, very cool about that. It's like this is my little baby that I incubated, built from scratch, and is now
I did this.
Is now the coolest kid on the block. So that feels good. That's the positive side. The downside of a PC gaming certainly is the buggy stuff, the non-compliant stuff. If everybody who's watching this episode who is a PC gamer has had some experience where they're getting some weird issue and you're trying to figure out what it is, and there's not a lot of help online, and then you got to like do Google forum searching, and then somebody made a single post like 6 years ago that described the same problem, and then maybe they put what their solution was and maybe they didn't. It can become very, very frustrating on the software side of it to just make your shit work.
Totally.
And you never have to have that problem on consoles ever. You put the game in and it works. Not since I was blowing into my Nintendo cartridges in the late 80s have I ever had a problem making something work on a console system.
And those problems, like if there is a problem, like they're always like a big catastrophic problem, and it's like it's like, well, I guess I have to mail this thing back in. Well, today of course you have fucking updates and patches, but there's several examples of games that had like game-ending bugs that were baked into a cartridge or a CD, and the only thing you could do is wait for slow mail to give you a new copy.
And then the other thing too is, and you brought up really good examples I didn't even think of, is like all the registration crap. It sucks to have. This is like Apple talks about the walled garden or whatever, like where everything is within our branding, and you don't have that on PC, which allows for all the tinkering that I like. Except when it comes to like buying a new keyboard and having to register online to make the keyboard work, and then the keyboard might not be compatible. I remember at one point, a couple of computer builds ago, I bought, I believe it was Asus, an Asus motherboard and an Asus network adapter. Mm-hmm. And for whatever reason, and they're both made by Asus, those two things were not compatible with each other. I had the weirdest bug in the world where every 10 seconds or so, my PC would freeze for 2 seconds. Imagine how frustrating this is. You're using your computer and you use it for 10 seconds, and then it freezes for 2 seconds. Nothing happens. And then you're good for another 10 seconds, and then freezes for 2 seconds. And I had like 3 or 4 days of that before I was finally able to track down the issue. And it never occurred to me that the issue would be the compatibility with an Asus network card with an Asus motherboard.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's wild.
So that, having to do BIOS updates and taking the risk of ruining your... It sucks. So anyway, on the console side... what's really good about it is just the convenience of it, which is why I just said it. But then also, I will say this for console gaming, which I don't think we mentioned yet. When you're talking about, because there's no PC first-party development the way that there is for console, you can have like all the cool stuff that Nintendo did with the Wii. Yeah, that was all first-party development where games are being specifically catered towards the weird Wii controller. There was a lot of really fun, innovative experiences with that, like playing baseball, the Wii Sports Baseball.
Yeah, definitely.
And for one thing, third-party developers were kind of scared away by that because it was kind of a pain in the ass to port their games to the Nintendo controllers. But that's fine. You could just play those third-party games on other consoles. But Nintendo was giving you something new, something really, really innovative.
Yes, yeah.
And you could say the same thing for the Sony first-party games in a different way. They're not as innovative as they are just really, really good examples of genre-defining classics. So Last of Us 2 and God of War and all those games aren't especially innovative the way that Nintendo games are innovative, but they're nevertheless like basically perfect video games that are perfect because Sony, the first party part of it, knowing that it's going to be a system
There's
seller,
a certain level of focus that's given to stuff like that.
Yes, and that focus tends to only come when you're the first party, you're directly in control of the development and then eventually the release of
An
it.
endless bankroll also helps.
Totally. So, in terms of the gameplay, even though a PC experience will give you the bleeding edge graphics and all that, don't sell the consoles short because they are, the first party games in particular, are giving you something that is unique to them that only first party development can achieve in terms of innovation on the Nintendo and in terms of just perfection of whatever genre that the game is being released in on Sony. So that's another really good thing about consoles that we shouldn't overlook. And then the downside of console playing is that particularly towards the ends of generations, games start to look a little bit more dated compared to PC gaming. You get 6 or 7 years into a console, and now you're using tech that's 6 or 7 years old. It starts kind of showing its age a little bit. So that's one downside. And then the other downside is, at least on Nintendo, because we brought it up before, the online experience can be frustrating. Sony and Microsoft have sort of taken steps to make it a little bit easier. But if you want to play games online on PC, that especially on Steam now, that is the easiest way in the world.
And it's also incredibly important to mention that it's still free. It's still fucking free.
How did I not forget that?
That's so with Sony and Nintendo and Microsoft, and it's been this way for years now.
Oh yeah,
you have to pay money for the privilege of fucking playing online. And I think with PC games, I caution to say it'll never happen because where there's money to be made, right?
And if there's one thing Gabe doesn't have enough of, it's money.
But like that's the thing where I could see if there was a concerted effort to make, and I don't know how you do it because PC is such an open platform.
Yeah.
But if there was some effort to be like, well, no, if you want to use Steam now, you've got to pay $30 a year to do it, and what you're paying for is the privilege of playing an online game on Steam. If the level of revolt for signing up for PSN accounts to play Helldivers 2.
I'm exactly going to go the same
I
place.
could not even fucking imagine the level of revolt from PC gamers if they were being charged money to play.
There would be actual open protest, like sit-in protests.
Yes, I totally agree.
Outside of Valve's offices that I would be a part of. I don't think it'll happen on Gabe's watch, but if Gabe ever retired or died or whatever, and then Valve becomes like some kind of board-owned public company, you could definitely see it then. But
Certainly.
One thing that PC gamers are really good at is bitching, and that is absolutely the Rubicon. Right. And if they tried to charge us for playing online in this one oasis that we still have to be able to play games for free, I mean they would. It would be like January 6th.
Yeah. It'd be fucking Windows flags instead of Trump flags. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think we'll be okay there.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Well, that's going to do us here, talking PC games versus console games. It's a fun talk, and I think what is so interesting about it is like over time seeing how they've merged into one. And I remember years ago listening to a podcast, maybe even it's as old as like the Term podcast, but friend of the show, Ryan Scott, who used to work for the 1UP network and all that stuff. I remember on one of their, and I think he was on this show, but it was with Dennis Dyack, who he was the head of Silicon Knights. And I want to say this is going back like 15, 16 years, but he had this whole discussion about how the idea of a video game console is going away. And like it won't be a thing anymore. Well, obviously that hasn't happened yet, and I don't know if that's going to happen anytime in the near future. But the idea of convergence between what's a PC, what's a console, how do you consume your video games? If you can buy a Samsung TV right now and it has Xbox, the cloud gaming service, then there's no console there at all. So like that is in a sense like the full convergence of these things. I'm skeptical that it's ever going to happen. I do think there's always going to be, at least in terms of us, there's always going to be that. I think our kids is a different story.
Could be.
Like, Roblox is this juggernaut that there doesn't seem to be an end in sight, and that's what they're growing up on and what they're going to play. And they play it on phones, iPads. They don't play it the same way that we grew up playing our shit.
Yep.
So it's a talk for another 20 years or so. But yeah, it's just interesting to see how these two very diverse categories have, like, there's still some diversity between them, but I think by and large they have come together more so than I ever would have predicted possible.
And funny for me, because I grew up on consoles, then left them to be a PC gamer for a good 15 years.
Yeah.
And then now the perfect marriage, because I've gone back into consoles in the last 8 years or so. I now own all the consoles. And I honestly, I guess PC is my first love, I guess. Mm-hmm. But it feels like I play all of them roughly equally if you just do a console versus PC divide right now. And any time that I hear, I'll see it on social media or whatever, fanboys are touting one over there, it just it comes across as like just the dumbest shit. It's like, guys, we're all here to play games.
Exactly. And
good games can exist on any of these platforms at all. So just, criticize each individual company when they go astray, but when they're doing it right, there's no need for blind loyalty. Just love all of it.
It's the dumbest thing in the world. And we'll end it right there. Console fanboyism is the dumbest thing in the world. Like, subscribe. We're on Spotify if that's your deal. We have a podcast feed right here on YouTube that you can check out. Give us comments, give us topic suggestions, all that good stuff. Check out more Side Crisis. I have good authority, Uncle Bob.
Yeah.
That a certain, we'll call him transient movie reviewer, might be reemerging in the near future. I don't know. We'll see. But what I can tell you is that somebody got the movie Fear on Laserdisc. and it may or may not be talked about in the very near future.
What parts are going to be talked about? What parts of the movie are going to be talked about?
Oh, God, no. I have opened up a horrifying can of roller coaster-related worms here. And we'll leave it right there to the imagination of the viewer. Thank you so much for watching.